and she is mourned most deeply in her passing. That promise of lifelong service I renew to you all today.
Three cheers for His Majesty the King! Hip hip!
Yes, there's been a lot of sadness, but there's been a lot of gratitude too, it has to be said. Also people wanting to celebrate. One member of the public who I bumped into just said, what a reign, which I think summed it all up really. Focus on Buckingham Palace. It will be very poignant later today when that big procession passes the palace and the Queen's coffin on the gun carriage as Her Majesty passes her main London residence for the last time on the way to Windsor. That will be a little later on as we get into the procession after the service at Westminster Abbey. With me, two very special guests to start today, and I'm really pleased to have them here, as I'm sure you will be. We have Felicity Kendall, the distinguished actor, and we have the former athlete and man who was really the brains behind the London Olympics and lots of other things too, Lord Coe, Sebastian Coe. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Lovely to have your company. Felicity, can I start by asking you, before we talk about personal knowledge of the royal family, just for a sense of the last 10 days, the impression it's made on you?
The last 10 days, well, today is very special, isn't it? It's a kind of day of thanksgiving and saying goodbye. So today is particularly painful, I suppose, in a way. But the last few days, I've noticed that it has been an extraordinary combination of people from every walk, from every age, every race, every creed, every kind of family. And really, there's this collective need to go and pay respects to this most extraordinary of women, and to just say thank you for the lessons, for the dignity, for the service that she promised as a young girl, and she has fulfilled. And it is a lesson to us all that we should take really to our hearts.
It's a very good point to make right at the start of the day. And I'm just wondering what your insight is really into the fact that, given that we live in a world which is very polarized and divided, and we suddenly have an episode where we have people coming together who may, in other circumstances, not be on the same side, all of them wanting to come together to show sympathy and to show gratitude.
Yes, and one of the things that is most, I think, stunning is that in this world where selfies and I am here, and yes, I put my mark on this and it's all about me being involved, there is this pilgrimage that has been going through, paying respects, and there is not a mobile in sight. It is absolutely in the moment. It is there for her, with her, recognizing her, and that moment will be over in a moment. It's gone. And I think the combination of real grief and that it's over,
Yes.
is the fact that today she is gone.
Yes.
And for 10 days people have been saying, yes, we will do this, yes, remember her. And now that is going to come to an end in one sense. You can no longer pay respects. And her family are having to grieve in public, and I hope they get some comfort from this universal outpouring.
Seb, of course, it's not just a matter of some concern, interest, and a desire to be grateful in Britain, because, as you know, given some of your recent work abroad, it's something that's also affected others.
I think for me, that has been the most instructive and insightful, because you talked about a world divided. I was actually in Zurich, our last athletics meeting of the year, a big one-day meeting. And I was in a row of athletics family from China, Italy, Spain, Canada, Australia, and a Kenyan delegation. The Kenyan delegation were in tears when this was announced at 7 o'clock. The stadium in the middle of Switzerland became a very somber place. And everybody sat there absorbing the news at the same time. And I sensed, of course, this would be an extraordinary event in the United Kingdom, but it was that moment in Switzerland that gave the clue to just what this impact was going to have globally. I was then in Sao Paulo a few days later for the South American Athletics Championships. Every flag in Sao Paulo at half-mast. Yeah. And federations having a minute's silence before their South American Track and Field Championships. I then went to the west coast of the States, every flag at half-mast, and the same wall-to-wall coverage on every television station. So my absorption of all this has been overseas, and it just makes you realize what an extraordinary and global event in a so-called divided world, because the world has come together around this in a way that I think we shouldn't be surprised, but it's wonderful to see. It's wonderful to see all the same.
Do you mind if we pause for a second? We'll come back and we'll continue the conversation, because the opportunity to visit Westminster Hall, as I said, the lying in state, ended this morning, nearly 2 hours ago, by which time some people had been queuing up for 24 hours, despite the rather sharp fall in temperature overnight. Lots of people, of course, are crowding along the route itself. Parliament Square looking fairly quiet at this point, but trust me, it'll be very full later on, with a tri-service guard of honour dominating Parliament Square itself. And just wait for that first procession and the sound of the pipes and drums. Honestly, you will be blown away by it. So let's join Sophie, who's in Parliament Square.
Yes, well, we have watched hundreds of thousands of people pour through these gates as they left Westminster Hall over the past few days. The gates are now closed, and Parliament Square is empty. No public are being allowed in here today, but instead you can see thousands of people along the streets here, right down Whitehall as far as the eye can see. One woman's been camped out since Friday afternoon, others just here since last night. No one has had any sleep, like the two people I have with me now, Sarah and Mark, who were, if not the last people, very much the last people.
Yeah, we were
in the queue last night. What was that like?
Amazing. I think it's the best thing I've ever done in my life. Even having my children, Lily and Luca, I think this tops that. It was just amazing. I'm so pleased we did it.
It was a very last minute decision, wasn't it?
Absolutely last minute. Looked at the time. We've got childcare, so we just jumped on the train and came up here.
And you joined the queue at 9:30 last night?
Yeah. we basically didn't come. I'm a childminder and I couldn't find anyone to look after my own children. So I asked my mum. My mum came over last night to stay with us so we could watch the funeral today. And it just came over us and we said, we've got to go. And my mum's like, just go. So thank you, Mum. Thank you, Sylvie.
What was it like inside when you went through? Because you were almost the last.
You can hear a pin drop. It looked like a photograph. The guards.
The guards. It was surreal. It was beautiful. It really was
amazing. It just peaceful. Regal. It was the best thing I've ever done. It was amazing.
I was watching the live feed and I did see you come through and you shed a tear, didn't you?
Yes, I did. I mean, I am a naturally emotional person anyway, but the wave of emotion and love and just the moment is this. I mean, this is a history.
Nothing you've ever seen before.
I mean, look at where we are now. I mean, we are Mr. and Mrs. Barlow standing in this square, and
you're here. You were very much a moment of history. Well, thank you very much, and I'm very glad you got through.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Well, it's so nice, isn't it, to see people, albeit on the day of a state funeral, enjoying the experience and appreciating the fact that they are here. And I think we all sense that. Felicity and Seb are still with me. We were also wanting to touch on really the kind of quirky sense of humour that the Queen had sometimes, if I can put it that way. I'm going to start this time with Seb, if I may, and because you're obviously so associated with 2012, and I remember having to do a bit of commentary over that, the gag on the helicopter, and I still get people asking me whether that actually happened. Did the Queen jump out of a helicopter? And I'm sure you're asked much more than I am, Seb.
There isn't a day that goes by without somebody somewhere in the world asking me about this, and a whole heap of people still believe that she did actually jump from the helicopter. No, genuine. No, really? No. But no, it was an extraordinary moment. It was Danny Boyle who was our director. Yeah. It was the only day throughout the 7-year period of the games when I did genuinely feel the globe wobbling as he came in and said, we've done some market research and it shows that the Queen and James Bond, in that order, are the iconic, they're the global, iconic global figures. And wouldn't it be, I was buying right up to that moment until he said, wouldn't it be a great idea if we could get them to jump out of a helicopter together? And in fairness, of course, it was Danny that actually got it across the line, the great Republican, who actually turned down a knighthood for his efforts in delivering the opening ceremony, sat with Her Majesty, and there are lots of things that are said about it, but it was Danny that persuaded her. My first role was actually to take the Princess Royal through the creative thoughts, and I remember sort of with these rather hammed up drawings and showing whether the helicopter, and the only question I got at the end of it is, what kind of helicopter? And I realised, of course, she knew everything about helicopters. I said, well, you wouldn't get a Chinook under Tower Bridge.
Oh, that's wonderful.
You might get a Sea King, and it would need to be a twin engine. And I suddenly, of all the questions I thought I'd get, and that's actually how it started. But she entered into the spirit of it.
It was a stroke of genius, really.
Well, really. I think it is. I will say it from this distance, but I think it will always be the iconic moment in an opening ceremony.
That and Paddington.
Yes.
And
the ability to keep the secret, because we filmed the Olympic sequence back in February. Yeah. And with the exception of one newspaper that managed to run the story, but on April Fool's Day. And so our communications team said, have you looked at the date? And they sort of left the idea. And then clearly with the Paddington story, there were very, very few people knew that was what was going to happen.
It's remarkable, really. I was just going to touch on the fact that you knew Princess Margaret, the Queen's sister, very well, because, as I understand it, you did actually do a reading at her funeral, which was a great honour for you, but reflected your relationship with them. And I'm just wondering how far back your memories go. There's a lovely image there, look, which is of Princess Margaret and Drew Lloyd Webber, and there you are on the left-hand side.
Oh, my
We're going to be chatting to that gentleman in the middle
Yes.
in a short while.
Yes.
What are your memories of that? Did they go back as far maybe as the coronation, or where do your memories go back to?
Well, my memories of the beginning, I suppose, that I remember is watching the coronation black and white when I was a little girl of 6, and we had to close the curtains, and we watched it, a collective family together with dogs and things. And I remember, I can still remember that the overwhelming feeling was that she was so beautiful. The Queen was so young and she was so beautiful. And then there was this moment that I think is well recorded when she comes onto the balcony with Prince Charles and Princess Anne, and they're very little girls. She has these beautiful gold bangles, and she's standing there, Queen, and Prince Charles, as a little boy, is playing with her gold bangles. And to this day, it's the most beautiful moment, because that was the beginning of almost a century. And now we have the continuity of King Charles, and it's a very special memory, that. And then I later got to know Princess Margaret. And what struck me when I was privileged enough to see them slightly more privately, not just publicly, was this bond between the family. They are funny and close, and there is a difference between the work, because the work has to be in a certain way, and then there's this naughtiness and this incredible love between them all. And